Hello, YouTube video subscribers, however small a number that may be. Thought I'd do a video, another addition to the skeptical biblical critique series. It's this time relating to the ideals of the end times and second coming and Armageddon, believed by many Christian sects. Sure, you're all aware of the current war happening in Gaza Strip and the Israel bombings and so forth, as that's been happening for almost 2 months now. This video won't really be on that subject exactly, but it is tied to it, the importance that the state of Israel has to the evangelical prophecies that they subscribe to. I'm sure many are aware of the evangelical fundamentalist Christians, primarily in America, and their uncritical support, unconditional, unilateral approval of Israel and all its policies. Of course, it is really only as a consequence, a religious, theologically motivated consequence of their inane eschatological mythology from the Bible, the fulfillment of they proclaim as prophecy in the lurid, mostly incomprehensible book of Revelations. Thomas Jefferson succinctly called it in an 1825 letter as merely the ravings of a maniac, no more worthy nor capable of explanation than the incoherences of our own nightly dreams. You could equally call it someone on an acid trip or a psychedelic mushroom experience. Apparently the grand plan of this God is essentially to get all the Jews packed into Israel, which is the necessary precondition for Jesus to come flying in the clouds on a flying Pegasus, so that the Prince of Peace can begin vengefully slaughtering all of the Jews and everyone else not belonging to the Jesus cult for not accepting and believing he is the one true Messiah. then, in many interpretations, essentially turned Jerusalem into a river of blood and bodies during Armageddon, an actual location within Israel and Jerusalem. The Muslims have their own view of the second coming where Jesus is on their side, which is hilarious. Of course, the Jews believe some other Messiah will come, and then it's totally unrelated to Jesus at all, and he doesn't meet the qualifications as laid out in the Old Testament to even be the Messiah. But you can just take a look at the Jewish perspective, the rabbinical writings, and easily deduce that the Jesus character cannot be the Messiah of Judaism. But this whole book of Revelation is just another enormously problematic contradiction and discrepancy in the New Testament. Shocker. There are many of those. The character of Jesus, as depicted in the Gospels, goes from being mostly this ascetic mystic of the Essene tradition who is teaching love and forgiveness of one's enemy, turning the other cheek, devoting one's life to serving the poor and the widows, renouncing material wealth, saying, "Blessed are the peacemakers" in the Sermon on the Mount, to, in Revelation, being this warmongering, violent, genocidal, aggressive, retributive punisher who is out for destruction and absolute carnage. One has to wonder, does Jesus have dissociative identity, multiple personality disorder? In the final book of the New Testament, written towards the end of the 1st century CE, the author John of Patmos is relaying his visions of what Jesus intends to do to this woman named Jezebel, I believe it was, who leads one of the 7 churches of Asia Minor. She is basically going to be held captive and tied down to a bed while being repeatedly raped and forcibly impregnated, and then giving birth to babies, which are then going to be smashed against the floor and killed in other brutal, unceremonious ways. It's like, what the fuck? Then people all across the globe are going to get unceasingly and torturously stung by these scorpion creatures for 5 months straight. Suffering unimaginably, but made unable to die. And again, this is all being perpetrated by all you need is love, Jesus. This is what I and many other children who grew up in this religion, at least the conservative, ultra-literalist, fundy denominations like the Southern Baptist or Pentecostals, or Seventh-day Adventist, are taught to expect in the possibly very near future. If, on the other hand, you ask these same individuals about miracles ascribed to Muhammad, the flying into heaven on a donkey story and splitting the moon in half, or the main tenets, beliefs of Scientology, such as having thetans attached to you, and the whole origin story of Xenu and the hydrogen bombs and the volcanoes and trapping of the souls on the earth and so forth, taught by L. Ron Hubbard, they will suddenly become rightfully skeptical and credulous and have a much higher epistemic requirements and a higher epistemological bar for belief in such claims, needing an abundance of supporting evidence for extraordinary, magical, supernatural claims from these other books and religions that they were not raised in from their very early childhood years. They are capable of becoming methodological naturalist and scientific rational empiricist on these alternative competing myths and storylines, and about other non-physical phantasmagorical entities. Of course, Dionysus doesn't exist, they will respond, apparently oblivious to the irony. How much Dionysus and Jesus coincide, their powers, what they do in respective in the Gospels and in Tales of Dionysus are striking, and so many other gods of the dying and rising tradition throughout the Greek and Roman world, and even in Egypt with Osiris, Mithras in Persia, and even Romulus and the Roman imperial cult. We have stories about Romulus ascending into the sky and giving a great commission to create Rome by the writers of the time, Livy or Levy, and talking about eyewitness reports to this regarding Romulus, and we have Suetonius writing about, in the apotheosis narrative, a resurrection, ascension of Augustus Caesar, and this is seen by witnesses and attested to. Consider the fact that we actually know and have tons of historical evidence demonstratively proving that Augustus Caesar existed, whereas with Jesus, we have Gospels, we have copies of copies, probably written originally. Let's just take Mark, the first Gospel written, and scholars will agree, New Testament scholars, was the first gospel in the 70s post destruction of the Jerusalem temple by Rome under Emperor Titus. And this is some 40, 50 years after the supposed crucifixion of Jesus. And we really have no other extra biblical historical writings about this guy. We have a brief mention in Josephus, but nothing about him doing anything miraculous. No healing of the rising Lazarus from the dead, no resurrection of all the saints, basically the whole night of the living dead scene that happens at the end of Matthew with zombies roaming around Jerusalem, which doesn't happen in any of the other Gospels. A bit of a major detail to leave out here. And then there's the supposed Testimonium Flavium, which pretty much everyone agrees who knows Josephus, who is a scholar of Josephus, that this was a later interpolation put in by Christian scribes when he's saying, and Josephus was Jewish, but we have this passage is completely out of character and just like patchwork all of a sudden in there. And he was a Messiah and blah 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 blah, and it's basically the Christian creed, and it's not written by Josephus. That's just the basic fact of the matter. So anytime you hear a Christian appealing to Josephus, educate them on the matter. But yeah. But yeah, this belief is pretty prevalent in America, in the Bible Belt. Just interviewing someone at a Trump rally, some older woman wearing the Trump hat, saying, "Wait, Jesus is coming. The Jews need to decide, or they're gonna die." I don't think she said that, but that's what they believe. The forces of light, and apparently Trump is a force of light. Guy who bombed the Iranian general who was actually fighting ISIS and the people that were killing Christians in Syria. Of course, they don't care about the oppression of Palestinian Christians in the occupied West Bank by Israel. Oh, they're not occupied. La 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 la. Israel could do no wrong. La 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 la. Total blindness. should go without saying that this apocalyptic religiosity has terrible detrimental implications for geopolitics and American foreign policy. And it fits quite nicely with the neoconservative Zionist view of geopolitics, of domination of the Middle East. It played some influence in getting Bush to invade Iraq when he was talking to the French president, who didn't join the coalition of the willing with Tony Blair and Bush and a few other countries. I think Poland sent a few troops. That was about it. I'm talking about, in Revelation, it's talking about Gog and Magog, and it's all these different interpretations by different pastors. Oh, this means Russia, and this means Britain, and this, maybe it's China? Yeah, it's definitely China. So what the fuck? No one can understand this shit. And it wasn't meant to reply to today. It was about the Roman Empire. Clearly. The beast 666 is Nero. That's it. It's telling Christians of that time to not participate in Roman society. It was an anti-Roman tirade. The book wasn't even considered canon. It was controversial. It barely even made it into the New Testament for various reasons, theological, that people like Elaine Pagels and Bart Ehrman can describe in much better detail than me, but the of course, the whole Nero thing at the time, there were, after Nero's death by suicide, and he was the Roman emperor who persecuted Christians the most. Not because they were Christian, they were just a group, a scapegoat. Jews were also persecuted by Rome. All the Jewish Roman wars, they suffered way more than Christians, it can be argued. But they were a convenient scapegoat for the Great Fire in Rome. But there were all these movements thinking that Nero would rise again. It was called Nero Redivivus cults, and people and Roman historians at the time were writing accounts of people claiming to be the risen Nero returning. And 666, if you look at the Hebrew, where letters correspond to numbers, 666 translates to Nero Caesar. Yeah. But today, these beliefs have taken over the various Protestant denominations of Christianity in America. So, the more war, chaos, strife, and instability there is in the Middle East, the longer the Israel-Palestine conflict and occupation, annexation of the West Bank continues until Al-Aqsa Mosque is destroyed and the temple rebuilt as foretold in the scriptures, the better. It brings us closer to the end times. To say nothing of what this does to any strategies of mitigating climate change and unsustainable consumption and extraction of non-renewable resources and oil, greenhouse gas emissions, and apathetic, accelerated obliteration of Earth's environment. Which doesn't seem to be going well. If you also read up on keep up with the latest science regarding climate warming, deforestation, the major tipping points in the Earth system, Arctic sea ice melt, and methane in the permafrost. So anyway, just can't believe how stupid humanity is because of religion. Well, guess that's it for now.